Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Ba-dum-bum. Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rhit Moore, past master and current secretary of Fort Worth 148.
This is Billy Hamilton, current junior warden of Fort Worth 148.
And this is Gabriel Jagush, current senior deacon of Fort Worth 148.
I just hear the Rocky music playing in my head because, like, we're in season 3. This is crazy. It's catching on.
It's pretty crazy.
I didn't realize that's what you were doing. I thought you were doing The Price is Right.
It did sound Price is Righty, but I didn't want to go further into it with the whole montage. But absolutely. And, you know, the break that we take, I mean, it's always very welcome. We're wore down by then. And then Grand Lodge hits. And we met so many brothers this weekend.
Yeah, we did.
It was extremely humbling, and man, did it get my, jets fired back up.
Man, I tell you, I love podcasting and I love interacting with listeners to the podcast, but man, I needed that break.
But
I tell you what was kind of it, and it weirded me out, not in a bad way. So like, don't y'all stop doing this because it's good for my ego. But I had several people come up to me during Grand Lodge and be like, "Are you Gabe?" I said, "Yeah, I recognized your voice."
Yeah.
So I was like, "All right, this is strange." I'm okay with this, but it was very cool to interact with people and get opinions from them on the podcast and just get encouragement, because I tell y'all, we wouldn't do this if it wasn't for y'all. And so all the encouragement that you guys give us is just very motivating for us to keep, working in the quarries and searching for further light, So we appreciate any praise, and even constructive criticism is welcome too. So
yeah,
and
it was very cool.
With sorry, Billy.
No, I was just going to say it was really cool to talk to especially at the backyard barbecue, to interact with so many of the brothers who listen to us from like McAllen, Texas, and El Paso, and Houston, and San Antonio. Like the opposite ends of the state.
yeah.
It's crazy. That was bonkers.
The one thing I regret about Grand Lodge is that Rhit and Billy and I all talked beforehand, and it would be really great if we recorded an episode while we were there. And so I packed up the mobile recorder and a bunch of mic stands and mics and stuff, and I said, okay, cool. Like, I have 3 microphones. We can put those in front of each of us, and then I have an area mic so we can capture conversation in the room itself. Or I could take the recorder with the area mic and just do interviews on the spot. And we didn't do any of that. Not at all. Instead, we decided to have a few drinks and watch National Treasure instead.
Dude, and we had a blast.
It was fantastic. Gosh. I'll tell you what, watching National Treasure at the Fort Worth Lodge Party House at Grand Lodge was a lot of fun because it just felt very appropriate. It's what got me into Masonry in the first place.
Well, and you're talking about what a fun social, just get together for some fun, cook some hamburgers, and all the guys sit around, even your wives, if they want to see us nerd out, it's just a lot of fun.
Oh, I want to do that next year. Just say, everybody, hey, we have this gigantic grocery list. We've divided it into clumps of $25 or whatever, right? So you sign up for a batch, and that batch is worth $25, and you go and you get that, and that's part of your, a contribution to staying at whatever house that we end up renting, and we all bring the food. We don't have to go out for lunch on Friday and Saturday. We can have dinner at the house. Like redneck surf and turf would be awesome. So
absolutely, and you know what we're watching next year on Thursday night?
National Treasure again?
No. We're watching Goodfellas.
Oh God, yeah. I will admit, much to my shame, Rhit made a reference to a shine box, and I said, "What the hell is a shine box?" And I promptly was mocked, well deservedly mocked. So
You're gonna love the movie, though.
yeah,
It's awesome.
So
before we jump into main content, we need to talk about Masonicon, baby.
Yes,
Second
we do.
annual.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
here. Tickets are on sale.
They're $55. So we have an early bird special. It is a limited number of tickets. We're not going to say how many because that's mysterious that way, and that keeps the fun in it. So just kind of as a advisory, the early bird special is $55. After we run out of early bird tickets, it's going to go to $65 for pre-purchase, and we do that because it's a matter of convenience. The earlier everyone buys their tickets, the better we can plan the event and get a head count. It's just kind of one of those things that we learned with catering and telling the temple how many people we're going to have there, and actually figuring out group activities in the evenings, that kind of thing. So the faster we
how
know
we split
information,
things
the better.
up.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Right. I mean, throw food in the mix, it gets rough.
So, and by the way, for the brothers who are looking at the website and are trying to figure out who we have talking, so we're doing a slow release. We want you to come back on a regular basis. And every week we're going to announce a different speaker. And you're going to want to hang in there for the very last one because the keynote speaker is going to be mind blowing.
yeah.
Just got him secured today.
Rhit texted us, hey, I got redacted for the keynote, and I mean we all immediately freaked out. It was great. So
yeah,
yes,
let's just say we're very happy to have redacted as our keynote speaker. So
yeah, and something that we're doing this year kind of different too, and this is all off the surveys, because overwhelmingly the two constructive pieces of criticism we had was we started too early and there wasn't enough time for each speaker, that they were kind of rushed. So we're doing an 8 a.m. registration this year and a 9 a.m. kickoff.
Yeah, so, as opposed to the 8 a.m. kickoff.
Exactly.
That was
probably
brutal.
have, maybe have a little brekkie there, but definitely have a bunch of coffee and everything ready for people to get charged up.
Yeah. And if we do come up with, we were tossing around the idea of having some events early on in the morning. Just depends on what we can line up and whether or not we think brethren are going to be elevated by it at such an early hour. So,
Yeah, and if nothing else, I know we're going to be there earlier than 8 because last year there were some early birds gunning to get in there, start shopping and looking at stuff and checking out the building.
But if you show up at 6 a.m. thinking that this is going to be like the 64th District breakfast that is also at 6 a.m., I have some news for you. I'm not going to be there. Actually, you know what? I might be, but I'm going to be very mad at you. Yeah. So
no,
but no, it's going to be great. And
yeah, so we're going to have the one main keynote, which he'll have more time as well, and then we're going to have 5 breakout speakers that are going to have an hour apiece, 60 minutes to do what they will.
Really happy about them having more time.
Yes.
Also, additionally, for anybody that is planning on coming in on that Friday, we are working on a festive board. The details are not nailed down. So once we nail all the details down, anybody that has purchased a ticket will get an email. We'll use our database of purchasees or purchasers and email everybody about the festive board. It will be a limited number of seating because everybody, I started looking at all the places that have like 60 plus person seating, and the deposits were a little prohibitive, so we're going to have to definitely say well below 60 people, probably closer to 40 people. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do is have 40 tickets available for a festive board. But that is not yet nailed down, and we do want to advise you before anything goes out that it will be a cash bar simply because of the liability reasons. We, as a lodge, do not want to provide alcohol to brethren just because that does become a kind of a scary liability issue for us. So,
Yeah.
we trust y'all. And we, as Masons, we know that, we're going to circumscribe our desires and keep our passions within due bounds. And our brother junior warden will probably be there yelling at people to stop drinking so much. But we do want to make sure that there's nothing that can go wrong on our end, legally speaking. So,
yeah. And that's not a fundraiser at all for us. So it's
No.
going to be at cost.
Yeah, it's at cost, and we're working out the math to hopefully we will only lose $1. So that should be okay. I'm fine with losing $1.
Oh, yeah.
So
Actually, and you know what? That will be during next year's term. So that brother junior warden does not have to be me.
Oh, okay. So
That
it's
is true.
someone else's problem. I like it.
It's an FDP.
Yeah. So do you guys want to talk about Grand Lodge and what
I'm
passed
ready.
and what didn't pass?
Yes.
I'm ready.
All right.
And it ended up being more surprisingly fun than I thought it was going to be.
It was interesting. So
Yeah.
we're going to start off with a discussion of the resolutions that passed and didn't pass and were withdrawn. And then we're going to have a discussion on the Grandmaster's recommendation, and then we'll talk about elections and the various committee reports that were made after the elections. So, but let's start off with resolution number 1. It was the first one on the docket, and
So I'm
ahead,
kind of sad I missed this one.
Yeah, you missed this one.
Yeah, I was downstairs in the basement, right, getting something to drink, and I apparently missed the doozy of a discussion.
So, as you may remember from the last episode of season 2, we discussed resolution number 1 and we skipped it because we said, don't need to discuss this. It's a name change for a lodge. No big deal, right? Rhit, how many times was it amended? Twice?
And well, it was amended, and then it was amended twice.
It was amended twice, and there was a motion made to table it, and the motion to table it failed. So it took about an hour to pass this.
It seemed like it did, yeah, that's for sure.
So for anybody that doesn't have background on it, Sayin Masonic Lodge number 295 wanted to change its name to reflect the life and service of Right Worshipful Brother Leonard P. Harvey. So they were going to change the text of the resolution. This is how it was originally proposed. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the name of Sayin Masonic Lodge number 295 be changed to Leonard P. Harvey Daylight Lodge Sayin number 295. Now, what's the problem with that, Rhit?
It was the lodge where it was placed.
The
word lodge.
Because it would have ended up officially being, using that phrasing, it would have ended up being Leonard P. Harvey Daylight Lodge Sayin Lodge number 295. And so eventually it was amended to read Leonard P. Harvey Sayin Daylight Lodge number 295. But it took 2 amendments and 1 motion to table. So it surprised the hell out of all of us. And we wish to congratulate the members of LPH-S Lodge. So, because there's no way I'm saying
you
that all
could
the time.
see the presenter, like when it was getting towards the end, he just had the deer in the headlight, like, I don't know what's going on anymore.
I felt a little bit bad because sometimes things go sideways. You do your research, you write the proposal, and then there was a a chink in your armor where you didn't know there was any,
Yep.
and you just panic a little bit. I feel bad, but
No.
hey, it ended up working out, and we're very happy for them. So, congrats, guys. So let's talk about resolution number 2. I have in my notes failed strongly.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, resolution number 2 would have required masters and wardens to hold an esoteric certificate, A, B, or C, doesn't matter which, at the time of their election.
Yeah. See, that essentially puts the power in the committee on work. It gives them more power to choose who your officers are.
Right. Well, and logistically, it's difficult too, right? So
Oh,
if
yeah.
I wanted to be junior warden, that means more than likely over a year in advance, I had to have already gotten my certificate because, if I take the exam today, I'm not getting it until next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, at the house, we had a big old roundtable discussion on that. That was fueled by alcoholic beverages, and I explained my position that I have no problem with this, and that was brought up that hey, you would need to plan over a year in advance. To which my response was, yes, problem.
Well,
Yeah.
But
and
that was not a popular sort of answer.
here's the perfect thing is that, I talked to Robert Marshall, who that is in their bylaws at their lodge. I love that.
Yeah. That
If
makes
you want to
sense.
do that in a lodge, fantastic, you know. But again, that's a lodge thing. You know what I mean? And we've already kind of got that in place. We've just gotten lax because the officers already have to be approved to the satisfaction of the lodge.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was kind of my argument initially was that, you see too many lodges that just kind of vote and they say, oh, yeah, this guy can do it, and they abuse it. But,
Yep.
I'm not going to soapbox on this one because it failed, and that's that. But,
Yeah.
I do maintain
I
that I have not changed my mind. I just accept the outcome of the vote, though.
Yeah.
right. I agree. I agree with the sentiment, but I don't think it's something that needs to be legislated.
No, it's not a
Yeah.
top-down legislative. That's a local legislative thing.
Yeah.
If you can't instill that just through, camaraderie and culture, then maybe you do need to make it a rule, but it might be hard to get voted in.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And something kind of worth noticing, worth noting though, that's not really related to the resolution itself. For those of you listeners that know him, and for those of you listeners that don't know him, just please pray for O.C. Anderson. He's, he could use some prayers. So,
For sure.
but okay, let's talk about resolution number 3. Referred to Committee on Investments. And the committee on finance and investments had no problem with this one. They said they agreed with it. But this one was the one that would raise the minimum endowment from $500 to $700. Thoughts?
So I was going to vote for this, but the guy got up there and talked about how buying endowments for people that passed away, should be kept at 500. And I was already wishy-washy about it because, man, this is a hot button for me. I don't like this whole program. So I ended up voting against it because, it's essentially raising it by you're going to get $7 more a year.
Yeah, and that's if
and
it's
lodges,
a good year, right?
Yeah, lodges need to buck up. Well, that's the minimum we get now, which is usually what we've been getting recently. A good year, you're going to get another 0.5%, so 4%.
But it's still a raw deal. So
It is a tough deal, and you run the numbers on paper, and over time, when a lot of people that are endowed pass away, sure, you do get a bigger return, because you're not paying per capita, but
Right.
you're still only getting 3.5% on that money every year, maybe 4.5. I promise you, your lodge can invest it more wisely if it's in a new air conditioning system when you have to have it. Because
Yeah.
if you sink all your money in endowments, then you first of all, you're
Well,
not getting dues, and then it's
and I would rather see lodges say, "Hey, we'll buy an endowment, disclaimer, this may not be strictly legal in terms of it, but I would love for it to be legal and kosher and all that to say, hey, we'll buy you a $500 endowment if you pay, 10 times the amount of dues, and we spend the $500 on the endowment for Grand Lodge, and then the rest of it we all dump into a Vanguard fund, which gives us a return of 8.5% a year. So that's a
it seems like something
no-brainer.
like that should be. But when you start setting those at different rates, Grand Lodge gets finicky.
Well,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I've heard before, there's lodges, not in Texas, but there are lodges that define endowment prices based off of actuarial tables and your age. So based
Oh
off of
yeah,
your age and the actuarial table for you know, your age range and everything like that, they're like, okay, an endowment, for an endowment for a 60-year-old is going to be however many thousands of dollars. An endowment for a 20-year-old is going to be like 5 times that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
Actually, my home lodge in Oklahoma does that.
and that's definitely a smart way to do it. I mean, I would love to see this endowment fund either go away altogether or disperse all that money out to every lodge, even if we can't touch it because it's in a fund or whatever. And we don't have the middleman of Grand Lodge anymore
Yeah.
because
Or just
they
give
get
it back to the lodges and let them live off the interest, but let them put it in like a Vanguard fund or something like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So on this one, me personally, I was originally for it, and after talking to some brothers and lodges that, they have low dues, but they do very well financially, and that kind of convinced me that maybe this is something that should be decided at the lodge level. It doesn't need Grand Lodge again, it doesn't need Grand Lodge to come in and say everyone must do this because it doesn't work for everybody.
Exactly. That's why it should be our option to start some kind of program like this at the lodge level. You pay X amount, you never pay dues again. That may be the case at 148, but it's not the case at Cook Peavy. You know what I mean? It should be our option. This whole blanket membership endowment fund it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we're not necessarily knocking any organization. Just to clarify, we're not we're not knocking the organization that has placed the endowment fund in place. We just think that the idea of the endowment fund is flawed,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Because
So
on paper you can make it work beautifully, but when you put human interaction into that whole system, things tend to go awry a little bit.
yeah, and it's just one of those things where, hey, we tried a new idea, it didn't work out. That's okay. We just need to find a different idea.
Yeah.
Let's talk about resolution number 4.
Oh yeah, that's a cool one.
So, for anybody that does not know resolution number 4, brief summary of it is that
You can wear your apron.
you can't wear your apron. Yeah, previously you couldn't wear your apron except at funerals and
St. John's Day.
St. John's Day, right? Celebrations, and that was it. You had to get a
Cornerstones, right?
Yes, but that's because the grandmaster is actually there, or a representative of the
That's
grandmaster.
right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like you have to basically get the grandmaster's permission for everything other than cornerstones, funerals, and St. John's Day celebrations, and so that is kind of limiting. So what this one did was add uh 10, 10
Yeah.
different occasions that you could wear your apron at without dispensation from the grandmaster, and so it makes life a lot easier. I would rather have just had more text struck from that instead of adding text to it, and make it
Yeah.
even more loose. But this is
Yeah.
not a bad resolution.
No.
This
Step
was a
in the
good,
right direction.
and it was amended by the Committee on Purposes and Policies. Um, uh, they said, "Hey, an event to celebrate the anniversaries of St. John," and then they amended it to say, "as seen in Article 238 and 239."
Yep.
And I don't have those on hand, but it defines it contains information about the Saint John Day celebrations.
Right.
Well,
And it was interesting to note that there was some discussion about this, that there was some
Yes,
objection to it. It didn't pass,
unanimously.
universally.
no, and I love the guy that got up and spoke about how, we can't use the badge of a Mason as a recruiting tool.
Mhm.
And it really got me to thinking. It's like, wait a minute. Now, I understand some people are looking at it that way, but that's our uniform. You know what I mean? And I really had to think about that in a sense that, you know, just the same as a police officer wears his uniform, sure, that might recruit people to become a police officer.
Yeah.
They want that badge and uniform, but ultimately there's going to be something deeper. And,
Mm.
you know, he wears that uniform because he's earned it. He's a police officer.
Yeah.
And I want to wear that apron in public because I've earned it. And I want it to mean something to people again.
And
So,
honestly, for me, it's a big part of it isn't even about for people to know what it is or anything like that. For me, a big part of it is that being a Mason has become a very large part of my identity as a person. And so I earned the right to wear that apron on all proper occasions, throughout an
mhm.
honorable life. And hey, if I say, hey, we're going to go present a scholarship or whatever, then yeah, that's a proper to me, that's a proper occasion. And I'm not going to
Well,
wear that
and
because I'm not going to wear that because I'm trying to recruit or because I'm trying to remind the greater world of what Masonry is. I'm going to wear that because I'm a Mason and I earned that right.
it, and it kicks you up a notch. It
It
should.
does.
It's like the ritual of getting dressed up a little, by the time you're all done and you strap that apron on and you're going out in the public, it should make you walk a little straighter,
Mm,
talk a little clearer, you know, seem more confident because it's going to remind you of all that hard work you put in to get that sucker.
yeah. And, it's, this is going to sound like a bit of an odd comparison, right? But it's like kind of like a magic robe almost, right? And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying, but you look at modern day magic practitioners, or heck, if you look at a priest, right? Priests have vestments. That's what they're called. When the priest goes up there and he's wearing the chasuble and he's wearing the alb
Yeah.
and he's wearing all this, all the bright colors and the lace and stuff, well, I guess if you're,
Robes,
you
funny
know,
hats.
robes and funny hats and stuff, and if you're Orthodox, beards, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, or if you're a practitioner of magic, a robe, right? But it's because it's a uniform that you put on that changes your mindset and that changes the
That's exactly
mindsets
right.
of others around you. So when I go to lodge for stated meeting, I put on usually I'll wear, slacks and a coat, and sometimes a tie. When I'm going to degree, we all wear a black tie and a black shirt and a black suit and the white apron and the gloves. And when I'm suiting up for a degree, the energy is so much more different than when I'm suiting up for stated meeting. You're putting on that
Dude.
uniform. You are
Yeah.
making your mind undergo an instant change just by putting on that apron. You would hope that the apron would be an ever-present reminder, ... But sometimes that ever-present reminder is a lot stronger when you're actually wearing it.
Yeah. There's no doubt.
So
There's no doubt about it.
this was a good resolution. I'm glad it passed. The objections that were listed to the resolution, I'm glad that I heard them.
Yeah.
I felt like they were from the perspective of that brother, they were very reasonable concerns. So, um,
Number 5.
Yeah, let's
We
talk
got
about
another
number
appendant body.
5. Woo, yes. And so this is about the Order of the Sword of Bunker Hill. And this is about the Revolutionary period. It teaches about the involvement of the Founding Fathers in Masonry and the involvement of Masonry in the founding of this country. I believe it has a lot to do with, obviously the Battle of Bunker Hill, but also specifically the death of a sitting Grandmaster. It's, one of our past masters is a member of that order, and he says it's his favorite appendant body. He's a member of the York Rite and Scottish Rite and Shrine and a bunch of other stuff, and he says the Order of the Sword of Bunker Hill is by far his favorite.
Yeah, and to be fair, he's a Indiana Mason where that's legal. And, of course, it's legal here now.
Yes.
But I think what got the vote to pass was there's no dues, there's no meetings.
Yeah, I mean, anytime this organization gets together, it's because they're conferring degrees.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, that's cool. And, this past master of ours is talking about getting a bunch of guys together and traveling to Tennessee, which I think is where the mother order is. Each one is an order instead of a lodge. And I think the mother order is in Tennessee or in the Northeast. And the closest one to us is in, I want to say New Mexico or Mississippi, but I can't remember. I did some research on it, but
Stay tuned. We'll probably host one of those at the temple before long.
yeah.
Do a big initiation.
God help me, I'm joining another appendant body.
Well, it's no money, though. No money.
Well, it's $25 for the initiation fee, and then that's it.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's
as
not
long
bad.
as I get some fried chicken.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be a fun thing to do with Masonicon, wouldn't it? Be like, hey, everybody, show up on Friday. We're going to do Order of Sword of Bunker Hill. That'd be kind of cool.
Oh, maybe one day.
Let's talk about resolution number 6. This was withdrawn. And Rhit, do you remember any discussion on that? It was basically, this is the one that said lodges can charge late fees if they so desire, but it was withdrawn.
Yeah, I think he was kind of educated in the fact that, lodges already have the right to levy fees. It's not necessarily for late dues, but you could.
I don't think the way that it's right.
Well, we can levy fees against members.
Really? Because it says no lodge shall have the power to levy assessments other than regular dues against its members.
No, there's maybe before I speak totally out of turn, I believe there is a provision in our laws that allows you to levy fees against members, for maybe, I can't remember if it mentioned anything specific, but I'm pretty sure it had to do with attendance, which kind of has to do with dues.
Okay. I can see that. That would be a different rule, but that makes sense. But yeah, the big objection was, okay, somebody went delinquent on their dues. Now you're going to want to charge them more? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a hardcore secretary, man. Kudos. Keep that guy there.
And you know what? I support it. I support this because if the lodge wants, to do it, then sure, gives more power to the lodge. Is it smart? No, but whatever.
That's the thing that confuses me, though, is because nowhere in our Grand Lodge law does it say that you can't levy fees.
Oh, I've got it right here. It says dues and late fees fixed by lodge. The amount of annual dues in a subordinate lodge shall be fixed by the lodge as may be determined by a majority of the members present, provided that such membership dues shall never be fixed below a minimum of $50 per annum. Bylaws in conflict with this provision are void. No lodge shall have the power to levy assessments other than regular dues against its members, nor to raise its dues for a definite period of time, but may raise and lower its dues from time to time as it may deem proper, in like manner as provided in Article 309. So I don't have Article 309 in front of me, but that's something we'd have to look at.
Do some research on that.
So that one was withdrawn. I bet you will see it come up in a couple of years, if not sooner.
So not.
Resolution number 7, which was the basically it does not recognize past district deputy grandmaster, or sorry, individuals who have served as district deputy grandmasters.
There you go.
It does not recognize former DDGMs with right worshipful, but it would say, much in the way that you can sign your name Joe Schmo, comma PM, for past master, you can say Joe Schmo, comma PDDGM, right? For past district deputy grandmaster. I didn't really have a problem with this, but a bunch of district deputy grandmasters from the past came up and stood up and said they didn't care.
Yeah. Well, I won't say his name, but the brother who got up and talked about how it's not an elected position and only elected positions get titles that stick with you.
Yeah.
And
that's
perfect
kind
example.
of what changed my mind, because I was kind of like, yeah, sure, why not, right? And I'm still kind of in the yeah, sure, why not camp. But he had a really good point, and it it made me flip from neutral positive to neutral negative, basically.
Yeah. And it makes sense, because I don't even think that they really should be recognized. The DDGM's the DDGM. There is no, to where if you do want to recognize them, you would say, just like you did, they have served in the past as district deputy grandmaster.
Yeah. And nobody's
not
saying that,
or not past.
And nobody's saying that you can't call somebody a past district deputy grandmaster just because,
Yeah. It's free speech, man.
We can do whatever. But I know that some jurisdictions do have that title, and they have a ring for it and stuff. What I don't necessarily jive with is that in many jurisdictions, past DDGMs are right worshipful for life. Now,
it's too many right worshipfuls.
Well, and so one of the things that drove me nuts, not because I was, particularly for this bill, but there were many brethren that got up and argued against this bill, which, they didn't like it, but they kept talking about right worshipful and stuff, and they kept mentioning the term right worshipful. This resolution had no mention of right worshipful for former district deputy grandmasters. It did not say that we would give them an honorific of any kind. It just said that we would give them the title of past district deputy grandmasters. And so that drove me up the wall, because it showed that these, and I don't mean to belittle anybody, but if that discussion was happening about not giving district deputy grandmasters right worshipful for life, then you didn't pay attention to the resolution. Because it was not about that. It was about comma PDDGM, and that's it. And so it's like, much how in Texas you are comma PM, but you are not worshipful Joe Schmo. You're just Joe Schmo comma PM. So, brethren, if you're gonna talk about a bill or talk about a resolution, go and read it. So that's my grumpy man moment of the day. That was hearing all these guys speaking about this. I'm sitting there going, you didn't read this. So
that happened a few times.
Yeah. Rhit, stop me. Let's move on.
Number 8, that one passed.
Yeah. So
what
this was
a name change too.
This was a name change for a lodge. Number 8 was letting Fort Hancock Lodge change its name from Fort Hancock to Fort Hancock - Fort Bliss Lodge. Interestingly enough, somebody spoke out against this. So I'm not going to say cool. I'm not going to say who spoke out against it or what lodge they were from, but they accused Fort Hancock Lodge of trying to make a recruiting effort out of it, and claimed that Fort Bliss or Fort Hancock Fort Bliss only ever has 4 or 6 people coming to its meetings and stuff. And
let me be honest with you, if they didn't realize that benefit before, I'm glad it was pointed out to them. I mean, because Fort Bliss is right there. You know what I mean? It's like, why didn't somebody do that sooner?
Yeah, but I was just kind of stunned that it was the the discussion in opposition of it was very vitriolic, and
It was good.
it
Yeah.
was a popcorn kind of moment,
Yeah,
grab your
it's one of those
popcorn, but it was also
kind of hold your breath, like, oh wow,
yeah, but
interesting.
it was also kind of upsetting because it was a very unkind sort of it was a very
Yeah, in a
unkind sort of
way.
diatribe.
But I mean, you
So
got to take into account they're so nervous up there. You know what I mean? So like an emotion can start rolling out of them that they don't necessarily mean, or a tone. And I don't want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I mean, he wasn't like up there berating anybody, but he did have a little bit of a tone that was like, oh,
yeah, so that was kind of
it
something.
was interesting.
Let's move on
Number
to
9.
number 9, which was withdrawn, and this was the bill that said that any is basic. The kicker was no new or proposed realignment of Masonic districts within this
Oh, yeah,
grand
yeah.
jurisdiction shall be made without the vote of the membership of this Grand Lodge. So
Yeah.
even proposed realignment. So, but this one was withdrawn,
Yeah.
probably because somebody sat down and had lunch with the individual and had a
It's
conversation with
more
him.
than likely it. Because the
So,
way it stands now is that it's either realigned by vote of the Grand West or at the discretion of the Grand Master. He
mm,
can change it if he wants.
yeah. And we had this discussion on last episode, but it makes sense to have it the way it is right now.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
It works.
So,
Number 10 was withdrawn too, wasn't it? We were rocking and rolling there.
yeah, number 10,
Oh,
it was
they
it,
said
that
it's already legal. Yeah.
yeah, basically, hey, this had to do with digital archiving of records. So your minutes and other stuff that is private, as long the conclusion from purposes and policies was, hey, um, as long as it's secured, we don't care. It's as far as we thought already legal. So why are you proposing this? So it was very quickly
Yeah.
withdrawn.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And you should. Your lodge should have some kind of
yeah. Oh
at
God.
least effort.
Yeah, if you're not backing up, if you are still taking minutes by hand, that's not optimal, but it's fine. But do take
Back them
scans,
up.
back them up,
Yep.
scan them, because if you ever have a fire or anything if the secretary has a fire at his house, or if you have a fire at your lodge, you lose all those minutes. So back up your records, please. Um, let's talk about resolution number 11, which
Fail.
which was the short version of this was the names and
More
positions of
titles.
the names and positions of the officers of the masters, wardens, and secretaries associations shall be recorded as a part of their permanent Masonic record. And so purposes and policies recommended against this because MWSAs are not, uh, as far as the Grand Lodge is concerned, they're not really Grand Lodge organizations. They're
Yeah.
your permanent Masonic record is the degrees you took, whether what offices you've held in your
Hmm.
lodge, and
Blue
what
Lodge
offices
specific.
you've held in Grand Lodge, and that's it.
Yeah.
There,
It it's almost like adding your Scottish Rite
yeah. I was gonna
offices
say,
in there.
I'm sitting high priest of my chapter, but that's not gonna be in my permanent Masonic record. At least not
Yeah.
in Grand Lodges. That'll be in the Grand Chapter record. But
Now put that in your scrapbook.
yeah, and
We
if
don't
you
need
want to,
that.
nobody's saying you can't record that as part of your MWSA's records. But yeah. So
And they do.
that one was uh, that one was rejected. It was not withdrawn. It was straight up rejected. So
No.
let's
Number
talk.
12 fell
Yeah,
too.
let's talk about number 12. There was a little bit of drama on that one. The Committee
Yeah.
on Work rejected this one pretty solidly. And it talked about whereas the manual of the lodge states the following for an explanation of the furniture of the lodge. And, the Holy Bible is dedicated to God because it is the inestimable gift of God to man. Blank.
Yeah.
And whereas the Texas Cipher indicates that all the answers for the entered apprentice proficiency is included in the monitor, therefore be it resolved that in the Texas monitor be amended to include blank, in lieu of the asterisk. And there is an actual phrase that was printed on that, where I said blank in the therefore be it resolved spot. And I believe I actually said it last episode. But, I'm not going to repeat it. Because a certain presiding officer, a certain past presiding officer of the Lodge, Texas, mentioned that it was technically printing the work and that it was a violation of people's obligations. And there were some points made that, hey, the Texas Cipher, and this was pointed out by the Committee on Work, the Texas Cipher is not the Texas Cipher. It is a cipher that a company, a private company, is making that has Texas work in it. Nobody involved in the actual production of this cipher is a Texas Mason, because it would be a violation of our obligation. And we shouldn't have to change our state's monitor because of something that is being produced by a private company from out of state. So
we knew that was going to fail. It was just interesting how
I thought it was going to be
withdrawn.
Down.
Well, and it's funny that they came up and like, I didn't think you could write that as charges need to be, because it's like that would be a lot of people, not only the presenter but the people that approved it.
Yeah. So that was kind of a heck of a moment there. And I kind of laughed, but I was also kind of panicking because when when people start talking about filing charges on a mic in Grand Lodge, they might be joking. Yes, it might be a joke, but there are some things that there's more nervous laughter about than actual.
And brought up by Grandmaster, no less.
Yeah, or past Grandmaster, but.
Oh right, yeah.
But he's a good dude, and he didn't mean anything mean by it. He was being funny, but it was one of those like ha ha ha, yes, ha ha ha, oh God. So let's talk about resolution number 13. This was the one with the life counselor. Basically, it said, hey, your lodge's life counselor needs to have attended officer leadership training. And that one was pretty solidly rejected. The Committee on Masonic Education and Service came out and said, hey, this is just not practical at all. And for anybody that doesn't know what the life program is, it is a
lodge instruction.
Yeah.
Yeah, lodge instruction for I don't even remember what the FE is.
So I'm just going to say life program. If you cannot go to one of the officer leadership training one of the officer leadership training sessions, which is one of the things that you're required to do as an elected officer, then you are required to perform the life program, which is kind of like a correspondence version of that.
Beefed up all program.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you're an overachiever, you can do both.
Exactly. Which there's people that have done both, but it was just pointed out by the Committee on Education and Service that like, hey, like there's people that are going to be, way out there in the boonies that can't get to the OLT training, or people that just simply because of time or even just because of expense. Because, hey, OLT is like, what was it, $225 this year? It's $225,
and unless it's in your
and you have to spend money on gas and a hotel. If you live far enough away from it, I drove an hour and 15 minutes both days of it. All 3 days. So, that I was fine with that because I'd made my peace with that drive. But in retrospect, I wish I'd just gotten a hotel in Garland.
No.
But
no, that one should have failed.
Yeah.
What happened to 14? Let's see that
Let's
one.
talk about
That's the one.
popcorn. Get your
That's
popcorn,
the
ladies
one.
and gentlemen. Um, so, Rhit, do you want to talk about resolution? Do you want to talk about what resolution 14 was?
Oh man, that was what the
Because
whole
you're
scuttlebutt
the
at Grand
education
Lodge
guy.
was.
So,
Because that's the one that all papers had to be approved by the Committee on Work. Any educational paper that was presented in Lodge, which I mean, already if that would have passed, you just don't do it in Lodge anymore. But anyway, we all knew it wasn't going to pass, but it created a lot of buzz. I know Brother Pete posted something about it before Grand Lodge, and it had 200 or 300 comments within a few hours. You know, folks just like, oh, there goes Masonry Committee on Work trying to take over again. And you get there and they're like, no, we don't want this at all.
yeah, they
Committee on
didn't want
Work
to
is
touch
like,
that with a 10-foot pole.
oh, and the committee chairman, quoted our First Amendment right of freedom of speech, that, hey, sometimes we're going to say the wrong things that are not correct factually.
Yeah.
But we're taught as Masons, Master Masons, there's one of those 5 points of fellowships that teach you how to correct your brethren. So it's all built in. We got that all ready to go. But man, that failed so big. The guy coming up to withdraw because he knew it was game over, but where he messed up is when he said, so I can essentially take it back to the drawing board and bring it back. And
Yeah.
here comes a past grandmaster out of the back's like, no, sir,
So,
I'm ejected to this withdrawal.
yeah, because they said, motion to table, and at the time, most worshipful, now right worshipful.
Yes, motion to withdraw.
Yeah, he said, I make a motion to withdraw, and at the time, most worshipful, Chapman goes, there's a motion to withdraw. Are there any objections? And just right out of the gate, a certain brother who is very passionate about education just bolts out, and he goes, yes, I've got an objection. And he explained his objection and says, I don't want to see this next year. I don't want to see this for 3 years, And so he ended up, the brother who objected to the tabling, because he doesn't like the motion, ended up moving to vote on the resolution so that we could kill it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If a subject's brought up at Grand Lodge and not approved, not adopted, it can't be brought up again for 3 years. So that specific subject can't be brought up again. Now, he could bring up something that says it goes to the Committee on Education. He could change some major parts of it, but that specific in that, jest of that resolution can't be brought up for 3 years now. And it was genius. It was a good move.
Well, and honest. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, because I think he learned after that vote that no matter how he writes that, it ain't going to pass.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. And this, again, going back to it, this is something I think should have been handled within an individual lodge. I mean, because if you're the master of a lodge, you do not have to entertain educational content, that you feel does not merit, being given in your lodge. There are ways to address this at the local level. It's not something that this would put the onus on everybody. It would make it more difficult for, the three of us, for presenting something to our own lodge. And imagine the work it creates for the Committee on Work.
Oh, it'd be a nightmare. But again, it's like you said, it's just like the A, B, or C cert. Put that in your bylaws. The worshipful master has to approve it, or a designated committee appointed by so-and-so, or elected committee. You know what I mean?
Right.
If that's really an issue in your lodge, take care of it. Put that sucker in your bylaws.
And if you have a brother that's like, oh, there goes, John Q. Public again talking that weird alien stuff, handle that within your lodge.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So,
that one was fun. That's why you go to Grand Lodge, was for Resolution 14. It was a good feeling. You know what I mean? It was a good feeling.
Yeah. And hey, if you have next time you hear a brother talking about how The Texas work was brought down by Moses from Mount Sinai with the Ten Commandments in the King James Version, of the Bible, and that all of that knowledge was given to him by aliens or something. Take some time out of your day. Tell him, give him a piece of your mind, but don't make it
Yes.
a law. Um, let's talk about number 15. This one.
Fail.
So I know that there were kind of mixed feelings among members of the 148 crew, not specifically the podcast, although we did talk about it and we all had kind of different ideas about it. But within brethren of Lodge 148, that we all had mixed feelings on resolution number 15. Rhit, you want to tell us about resolution number 15?
This was the one to where they had the committee on work redoing the opening to where it would create a ritual that would do Master Mason's Lodge open with 3 without them running around the lodge room. Because in our work it says it's a quorum is 3, but when it comes to opening, you got to have master, wardens, deacons, Tyler.
Yeah. And
So
we say, hey, you need 3 people to open up a master's lodge.
Right.
Which is legal. You can do that. That's a quorum.
Yeah. So
it does bring up an interesting question, though. If the master and the wardens cannot leave their stations, who's going to be handling the door?
You got to get creative, Billy. I'm not going to tell you how to do your business.
But no, I'm saying that it's a valid reason for it to be brought up.
Yes.
But yeah, that creativity is a requirement also, I guess.
Yeah. And for me, it all boiled down to that there's just no way the committee on work could have done this without shortening the opening somehow. And in the end, I'm not for that because I know, it's just something to kind of scratch an itch. And then everybody's going to be using that version to open the masters as opposed, because there's only one way, you know what I mean? We have optional for EA and Fellowcraft, but
yeah. Well,
Right.
and then what I would just say is you say that, hey, it is only legal to do this if you have not, it is only legal to do this if you have quorum, but not X number of people needed to do this, said opening.
Yeah.
You're so hopeful. That's like your
Well,
lodge approves you for opening and close.
Well, the reason why I liked this one was because it gives a lot of consistency to the work. If
I can't.
if we say something, then you should be able to legally and by the work be able to accomplish said something. So
Here's the thing,
it
though.
was pointed out to me though by again, we talked about it before we started recording the podcast. We're going to try and keep names to a minimum. But it was pointed out to me by a brother who, needless to say, supports this resolution, that the recommendation against this resolution that the Committee on Work made and the way that it passed means that the Committee on Work officially does not want to have a stance on how you open lodge if you have quorum but not enough people to perform the full ritual of it. So it means that they're not that means that they didn't take a stance on it. So it is left up to the lodge to figure out how to do that. I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm kind of inclined to think that he's correct in his assessment of the, I guess, legal status of that, but I'm also not a jurisprudence scholar, so I don't know.
The thing that you got to take into account about our fraternity, too, that not everything that we talk about is literal. So when we're talking about, those indispensable numbers that gets us to 357, while yes, legally the quorum for a Mason is 3, but it's much deeper than just creating a quorum for a Master Mason's Lodge. There's a much, much bigger message. So, whether we have the ability to follow the work to the letter, on our end, it would be great, but just logistically you can't, because even in King Solomon's time, somebody was out there guarding the door. So there was at least 4 of them around there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just I get it, but it was scared me there'd be another short ritual that people would use.
Right. I was talking to a brother last year, and he mentioned something that probably applies to this. And he's like, Masons follow the path of least resistance. If you give them a shorter
Everybody
ritual,
does.
yeah, they're going to use the
Yeah.
shorter ritual.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're going to take the long way home from work or the short way home. If you find a
Right.
shorter way, you're going that way every freaking time. It's just natural. And that's the unique thing about Masons is we have to kind of fight that urge,
Right.
do the long form. So that was good. And I thought this one failing was going to bleed into his next one. Not to mention names, but it was the same proposer.
Yeah.
And I thought,
and I was terrified that it was going to cause a chain reaction of rejection.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it
And
didn't.
it didn't. He even
Yeah.
said the C word when he mentioned resolution 16. He got up there and said change.
Change. And you told him not to.
Dude, it is like the no word up to the grand style. I mean, if you want your resolution to pass, you talk about freedom. You talk about history, power to the lodges. Doesn't matter
Because
what
this
you're
is
presenting.
Texas, damn it.
You got it. That's how the Bunker Hill thing passed. Everybody was like, yeah.
Yeah, my revolution.
He's got a patriotic vote here.
Yeah. And I mean, and we're not, we love him dearly, but when he busted out with, I'm not trying to change anything, that we all went, oh God.
Oh, I just think in my chair, I was like, it's no. Because
we
this
were,
one I wanted.
Because number 16, we were all rooting for. And number 16 it was amended. Originally, it said, therefore be it resolved that the Committee on Work of the Grand Lodge of Texas be required to develop a ritual to allow for the portion of the Fellowcraft Masons lecture that involves the explanations of the emblems identified in the latter part of the first section of the degree to be recited to the candidate either by the worshipful master from the east or by either the worshipful master or the senior deacon from the lodge room floor. This was resolved to, and the phrasing is not exact, but it's close enough. Therefore, be it resolved that the Committee on Work of the Grand Lodge of Texas be required to allow the lecture to be delivered elsewhere than the East. And that is important because it allows for what we call the walking middle chamber lecture. And that's a very immersive experience. As I said earlier, I'm not going to say that I've seen it or that I performed it or anything prior to it being, blessed by Grand Lodge this past weekend. But I can say that it is beautiful. It's a cool lecture to
conceptually.
Do the yeah, it's a cool lecture. It's a very powerful sort of experience.
It was kind of, I mean, the sense I got from the brothers in the auditorium at that time was it felt kind of like, well, we don't want to change anything. And I think the nail that really drove this into, the approval that it received was at the very end when it was read out, the other Grand Lodges, which we recognize in the United States, and exactly how many of them have a provision to allow us to do this.
Yes,
I agree.
So, and I'll say his name because he's actually a committee member, and it was a very neutrally worded statement. But Right Worshipful Jim Rumsey, who we've had on the podcast before, by the way, stepped up and he said, "Hey, when this said the resolution says that there are many other jurisdictions that use this. Whereas there is a practice in other grand jurisdictions of a walking fellowcraft lecture." He said, "Hey, I reached out to I think it was 54 or 56 grand jurisdictions in the U.S. that we recognize.
I think there's 59.
As of last weekend, but I think it was different. But, said, hey, I reached out to the grand jurisdictions that we recognized, and of the ones that we recognized, I think he got like 50 or 51 answers back. And of the responses that he got back, 45 grand jurisdictions allow for the walking lecture, or don't have any laws against it. And of the other four, right, of the other four jurisdictions, two of them have rules for he can, one of them says the lecture has to be delivered in the South. One of them says the lecture has to be delivered by the East. The other says that it has to be delivered, I think, in the Northeast corner, he said. And then the other one has to be delivered in a fixed spot in the lodge, but that it's anywhere in the lodge at the discretion of the worshipful master, as long as it's a fixed spot. So, Texas has now joined the ranks of 45 other grand North American jurisdictions within our recognition. That's an important statement because there's a lot more than that within our recognition that allow for a walking middle chamber lecture. So I was very happy.
It's power to the people, man.
Power to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did 17 pass? I've got it
amended.
Did.
It did. It was amended. So let's talk about resolution number 17 real quick. It says it changes basically it changes the phrase maims to physical disabilities and physical defects to physical disabilities. And that was it. It's a housekeeping bill. Committee on Purposes and Policies supported it with an amendment, and they said physical limitations and physical disabilities. So I would prefer physical limitations or physical disabilities, but that's a different sort of discussion because or has a different implication than and in this case. But it was passed as amended. Resolution number 18 was withdrawn, and I'm glad that it was. But basically, it changed in all of our code. It changed the phrase moral turpitude to a crime other than a minor traffic citation, which, as I mentioned on the last episode of the podcast, if I build a shed in my backyard that's not up to code, I've technically violated Masonic law if Resolution 18 had passed. So, not offensive.
19, what was that one? It passed.
Yeah. So it passed. Whereas the apron presentation some years ago was not part of the Master Mason's degree, whereas it was made an addendum to the degree, and whereas the wording at the end of the Master's lecture has never been changed to reflect that change, therefore be it resolved that the wording at the end of the Master's lecture be changed to include and the apron presentation.
So is that esoteric too? Did you just break your obligation again?
No, because I'm reading something that was printed. So I suppose technically, and I suppose now technically that's esoteric, but as it stands, I'm reading something off of a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So that I didn't print. Ha.
If you've got your ACE there, you got to get studied up and repass it.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're going to fail you at your ACERT for forgetting 4 words. No.
The Grand Master's recommendation for me, though, that was the one that was like very odd. That's like, so what does that? So is that a law now? I mean, what is?
So what?
So we just passed a directive.
Pretty much, it's not. So Grandmaster's recommendation, the short version of Grandmaster's recommendation number 1 is that we need to put together a Grand Lodge committee to review Title V, which is Masonic disciplinary violations, review the Masonic disciplinary violations of our code, and provide suggestions, not to make changes wholesale, but to provide suggestions to be voted on at later Grand Lodge communications, because Title V is very complicated and has gotten very complicated. And due to a reversion that we voted on a couple of years ago, it is once more not legal to be a member of the Communist Party and be a Mason, or to cohabitate with lewd women and be a Mason. So there's a couple of
my
very
thing, though,
outdated
is
things in there.
What's the committee consist of? What's their time frame? What exactly are their directives in? Because it's just saying make it a more cohesive and more easily read. Who heads that committee? Who appoints it?
Oh, Rhit, this is Freemasonry. You're expecting too much.
So, it's kind of like it gave me flashbacks to the Table Lodge, that who was it? Jerry Martin, past Grandmaster, that had a committee formed to create a ritual for the Table Lodge. And it's still, I guess, floating out there somewhere. I don't know. I've never heard again about it. There was
Yeah.
no time frame put on it. It'll be interesting. We'll see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
I bet that'll drag on for a few years.
So
I didn't know what to think about
but it
that
passed.
one. But
So we will now hopefully in the future we will have a more easily interpreted Title V and just kind of an easier time if we ever have to do trials. So I don't know, but it is needed. That I'll say, it's definitely needed. Let's talk about elections. So
that was awesome.
It was a great election. So 4 men made themselves available: Brad Billings, Russell C. Brown, who's got a super long resume, Randall Carey Smallwood, and G. Clay Smith. And so there were 4 guys running, so we had to have 3 votes to elect our Grand Junior Warden, because we didn't have a clear majority each time until the last one, which was neck and neck. And I'm very happy to say that our Right Worshipful brother, Brad Billings, was elected this past weekend and installed as our Grand Junior Warden. Now, Right Worshipful Billings has been on our podcast before, and at the time he was Right Worshipful because he was a district deputy. Now he's Right Worshipful because, he's a elected Grand Officer. So
no, it sank in on the way home that we elected a millennial as it'll be our Grand Master in 4 years.
These dang young kids and their cell phones and the iPhones and the TV. But really, though,
and the thing about it
happy.
is, well, the thing about it is, Brad was up against 3 stout contenders, and obviously, coming down to him and another member, and I don't think it was less than 200 votes that it was decided on by the majority. So, I mean, he worked his tail off to get where he is.
Well, and so did the other 3 guys. Like,
of course.
Let's be clear. We do want to extend our thanks to companions. Well, yes, companions, but to brothers Smallwood, Smith, and Brown, because it's a lot of hard work. And if you think you're a good leader for this fraternity, you're going to put in the time, and you don't make yourself available to be a leader in this fraternity unless you think you can be a blessing to the fraternity. So thanks, guys. We appreciate all the effort you put in. I mean, it is very meaningful.
Yeah. No, it was a really unique process to watch because they all would have been fantastic Grand Junior Wardens. And it came down. I mean, it was to me, that was a shift, because that wouldn't have happened 14 years ago. If Brad Billings would have ran, even with all the accolades and all the things he's done 14 years ago, that's not happening. There's no Gen Xer getting voted in.
Yeah.
When I first started. So I'm very hopeful. I've had a few conversations with him. You're talking about hitting the ground running, man. This guy, he's a go-getter. I'm very, very excited about the future. I mean, because we've got, Terry Stockner's year's already kicked off. So we'll see what we have in store there. But Paul Underwood, I know he's, quasi-pro technology. I can't speak how deeply he is, but I know Ken Curry he's very tech friendly. And then a millennial. He doesn't know anything but tech.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
So maybe we'll be able to register for Grand Lodge online next year.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
No, those kind of things, man, they're just going to make such a big difference in the, because it breaks my heart when I see brothers turning around and having to leave Grand Lodge to go find an ATM to get some cash. It's like, we should have done what Billy said and take $1,500 and charge 10%.
Yeah, I'm telling you. That's a good way to do fundraising. How many times at the TMRC Family Day are you like, man, I wish I had cash because no one accepts cards. And if someone was there saying, hey, I'll charge you 5%,
Hmm.
people would be lining up.
Yes, they would. It's interesting. Um,
Yeah. So about the registering online now, I think here on this podcast we have some people who may be able to pull that off. Just saying that if anyone out there is interested in having someone who knows how to organize events online, we may know a thing about that. So
Yeah, just a slight hair of experience nowadays.
and look, I know talk is cheap, but if half of the stuff that these trustees that are currently our trustees, the grandmaster, wardens and deputy and treasurer and secretary, if they do what they say they're going to do, we're going to be light years ahead in just a couple of years. I mean, they're going to really make leaps and bounds to catch up, from our merchandise sales to everything.
yeah.
Because how cool would it be to be able to log on and buy the grandmaster's coin and monitor and an extra apron right there?
Oh yeah.
You know, let's cut McCoy's out of the picture here and start selling car emblems right there.
Not saying we don't love you, McCoys, but
No, but I mean, we've got such potential. And, they were talking about this, and Paul Underwood had a stroke of genius when it came to the logistics of it, because then, once we go online with our unique Texas square and compasses, we could be sending stuff all over the world, and it could become kind of a lucrative business, and you'd
yeah.
need a team. And he said, well, what if you got lodges that needed to raise a little funds, and okay, you ship out the pins and you get to keep a portion of the proceeds. But when they're ordered, you got to get it out,
Yeah.
and all right, this lodge sends out coins. You know what I mean? We've got the packing team. It really was genius, to where that could get huge quick. But they're progressive, so I'm excited. We'll
Yep.
see.
So that I'm super excited about the whole thing. So, and
Yeah.
we did have some more elections after this. W. Keith Reynolds was elected to the Committee on Work. So congratulations, Brother Reynolds, or sorry, Right Worshipful Brother Reynolds. And
Yeah.
William Scott Leopold Sr. was elected to the Board of Directors for the Grand Lodge Library and Museum. And Charles B. Well, you know what? I don't actually have that written down. I feel bad now. Charles B. Cockrell and Bert Massey were running against each other for the board of directors of the Masonic Home School, and that is not written down in my booklet. So I was trying to stay there for all the elections, and I thought I wrote everything down. So my apologies for that. But so we did have some good news. We now recognize the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of D.C. That was a report that was made before lunch, and the report was made. We had a hand vote on it, and now we have another Prince Hall jurisdiction that we recognize. Previously, we only recognized Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas and Prince Hall, Maryland, and now we recognize D.C. as well. So this is a good step in a positive direction. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah. Hopefully the cascade will begin.
Yeah, I'd really like to see us working on all. I'd like to see us working on all the adjacent, geographically adjacent Prince Hall Grand Lodges. So Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, New Mexico, that kind of thing. That would be really nice to see that, and then just kind of work outwards from there. The point has been brought up that it is traditional for the younger Grand Lodge to ask for recognition from the older Grand Lodge. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of Prince Hall Grand Lodges that would have to ask us for recognition. Somebody then brought up, well, doesn't that mean we would have to ask for recognition from Prince Hall Grand Lodge, Massachusetts? And yes, we would, because we're the younger
Yeah.
lodge.
No, and hopefully that kind of stuff starts happening. But we got to make sure the time's right. I
Yeah.
don't want to step on our own foot, but it seems like it's getting there. So that wraps up, because I don't know who all the appointed officers are. We'll have to report that at some other
that was a
date.
big long list of guys. But hey,
Yeah.
it was a fantastic sort of experience.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Actually, the appointed officers are on Grandview already. If you sign in and go to Grand Lodge, there is a link for Grand Lodge officers, and they're all there.
Sweet. There you go. Log in, check it out. So before we get going too long, I want to kind of close up with what I took away from Grand Lodge as the most important thing, probably one of the most important things I've learned as a Mason. And that is, get a group of guys that are going to Grand Lodge with you and get an Airbnb house.
Yeah, one of the things that I said a couple times while we were down there is, man, having our own frat house was awesome.
Yeah,
Right.
there was what, 16 of us there, or 15, because Gregorio couldn't show up, unfortunately.
Right.
But we made it work. We all took quick showers. We were in and out of the bathrooms. We had 3 bathrooms to share, so it had to be, we had to be on our game. But man, what a good time! We came back from lunch. We're discussing things. Of course, we were right across the street, so that helped. But
So
it
find
was
a
just a
different Airbnb.
blast. Yeah, you're gonna have to find a different. But Hillcrest kind of started the trend. Hillcrest Lodge in Dallas. I know Arlington 438 had their own Airbnb.
Right.
But you go back, and instead of going into this hotel room with maybe another brother, you going in there with, at any given time, there's 10 or 12 of us there, all sitting around, sipping a little libation and just kind of discussing the day
Yeah.
and see where it goes. Or watching National Treasures and just nerding out. That was a blast. I mean, and that night too, we sat there and hammered out the Masonicon website, a good portion of it. Or I say we, mostly Billy.
And
We
yeah, I mean, it was like there was a lot of work that got done and a lot of fun.
Yes, and it was cheaper. What did we pay? $45 a night. It was like $42.50 a night a piece.
Yeah.
So look into that, brothers. Even if you don't have a big group, they have small Airbnb options to, the one we got.
Right. And we did learn something important too. If the Airbnb says there's a certain number of beds and you walk in and you're like, I don't see the number of beds they said. Apparently check under the beds and there may be other beds under there. So
Because there may be
There might
such
be
thing,
trundle beds.
there may be such a thing as trundle beds, which
right.
a poor individual may have been sleeping on the couch like a baby.
Oh, and that wasn't a couch. That was not a couch. That was a Victorian love seat.
Yeah,
It
I
was
think
so
I'm being
funny.
generous with the description of couch,
Right.
Yes.
but it
Yeah,
was very
'cause-
funny to see. Ha ha.
oh my gosh. Antique thing. It's like 3 foot long by about a foot and a half wide. So he's got a cheek and a half on and a half a cheek off.
Which
Good thing
God bless
the
him.
individual in question is very fit and trim because some of us would have a problem.
Oh, me or you, Billy, we'd have just rolled off that thing, or it would have collapsed under our.
At some point, it would have turned into a pillow because that's all we could use it for.
Exactly. That's funny.
Oh, it was good times.
Well, guys, if it's all right with you, I'd like to give you the fraternal quote of the week. And
Rock and
this
roll.
is: the soul possesses more resources of design, more intricate and wonderful harmonies are displayed in it than in the interplay of suns and systems. Orion, sculptured in light on the black walls of space, fades into a mere firefly pageant when compared to this matchless temple, which sprung from the soul of the infinite, is robed with his own beauty and majesty, and endowed with his own immortality. That's
Who said that?
by Right Worshipful Brother Jewel P. Lightfoot, past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Texas. And
I was gonna say that's got to be an old quote. That's elegant words.
yeah, everything he wrote was beautiful. But I was thinking about Jewel P. Lightfoot, and by the way, this is from his commentary on the Manual of the Lodge, which you can buy on Amazon or from the Grand Lodge of Texas. But I was thinking about Jewel P. Lightfoot because Brad was elected, and he's not, I don't think he's the youngest since Jewel P. Lightfoot, but he's one of the youngest in a long time. So
yeah, he's certainly in a very small class of grandmasters in his 30s.
So, but yeah, just kind of thinking about that. It's a very pretty quote. So
yep. Well, boys, I am looking forward to this year. We got good things in store. We're going to have some great guests on the podcast this year. We're up in the game. The word's getting out. So I'm stoked, man.
Yep, I'm looking forward to this year.
I'm pretty excited. You know, I'm especially excited about all the different guests that we're talking to right now, or potential guests that we're talking to right now, and especially about, you know, learning more from these guests, because we learn just as much from the guests as y'all do from the podcast. And I'm really excited about Masonicon coming up. I never thought that I would dive this deep into weird, strange education prior to becoming a Mason. And now that I've become a Mason, I couldn't imagine my life being any other way. So life is pretty good, guys.
Get your tickets now, bros. Limited tickets, $55. Yeah. Act now.
So if you wanna get more information about Fort Worth Lodge, you can find us on Facebook, Fort Worth 148 on Facebook. You can email us at info148@fortworth148.org, and especially Texas Masonicon. You just go to texasmasonicon.com. And so that's the Texas Masonicon website. So you can buy tickets for 2019 and see what speakers we have lined up.
All righty, boys. Let's shut this down. It was a great first episode, but I am wore out.
Yes, sir.
This is Rhit Moore signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.
And this is Gabriel Jagush signing off.